Good afternoon, and welcome to 4.4, The Power of Art. We appreciate you being here. We want to welcome you to this session, but also we want to welcome our virtual audience as well. Thank you for coming. There's a lot going on in 4, so we appreciate you dividing your time and coming to hear our distinguished speakers today. I'd like to start by reading you an excerpt. I thought when I saw the title of our session, Power of Art, that power may be an unusual word to use when describing art, especially for the uninitiated. And you may also be curious about how does art fit into the whole theme of this conference, Eradicate Hate. So I want to read you an excerpt from a book, Mural Arts at 30. And I'm not sure if any of you are familiar with the Mural Arts program in Philadelphia, but this is a program that began in 1984 as a strategy to combat graffiti in Philadelphia. And they hired a young woman named Jane Golden. She was employed by the city to come up with some sort of strategy to combat this defacement of city property. And so she started by befriending the graffiti artists. Well, actually, they weren't artists at that time. They were just taggers. And she taught them how to be mural artists so that they had a positive outlet for their propensity to be spraying on buildings. Eventually, this turned into the Mural Arts program. If you visit Philadelphia, you'll see murals everywhere. There's actually 4,250 mural projects that have been handled by the Mural Arts program of Philadelphia. And it's not only beautified the city, but it has grown into a strategy to build communities, transform lives, and it really is just a model for what the arts can do when used as an agent for social change. So I'd like to read you just a short excerpt from Mural Arts at 30. And this is in an article called Art That Heals. The people who wrote this article see themselves as working in a field called peace building. So they note that processes that try to organize conflicts into sets of neat solutions are insufficient, and the complex nature of conflict and trauma calls for a variety of healing methods. Art can explain emotions, ideas, or feelings that words alone cannot. Art can create a frame around an issue or relationship that offers new perspectives and the possibility of transformation, acting like a prism that allows us to view the world through a new lens. Rather than solving problems by negotiating the best solution, the arts can offer a new frame for interpreting the problem and the world around it. The artistic experience maintains the potential to transform people's worldviews, identities, and relationships. Where so-called rational approaches to resolving conflict prove ineffective or insufficient, the arts in every medium, visual arts, theater, dance, literature, and film, can be deployed as tools for creating opportunities for building bridges across differences, addressing legacies of past violence, and imagining a new future. And that's our superpower of art. So I'm very pleased to have with me on the stage 3 distinguished speakers who are involved in the arts. 2 of them purposely, and one of them told me he's kind of here almost by accident, but all have fascinating stories to share with you about their work. Catherine Spitz Cohen is the executive director of Film Pittsburgh. Tim Hines, all the way on our left, is the CEO of Trailblaze Creative, a wonderful marketing company. And Trish Edlesik is an Oscar-nominated, Emmy Award-winning director and producer of films. So thank you all for joining me. And I'm going to ask Trish to make her presentation first. Catherine, oh, sorry.
No, I'm like, okay.
Well, I was doing well.
You were looking at me. And also, can we just say thank you to Susan Corbett, who led the arts in our fair state for a long time as First Lady of Pennsylvania. So thank you for all your work.
It was a privilege.
On behalf of all of us who work in the arts.
Thank you.
I am Catherine Spitz-Cohan, Executive Director of Film Pittsburgh, and I am so passionate about this topic, so excited to be here today to talk with you. And I always like to say thank you because there's so many choices, and this summit is a perfect example of that. You could be 6 other places right now, but you chose to be here. And I feel so strongly and passionately about the arts and the impact of the arts that, to me, it's like you made a great choice. But the arts is often, as we all know, the first thing to go. So if school districts are losing money or not getting funded, the arts programs are the first to go. And so we see this all throughout our lives, and I'm here to, get on the soapbox and say, please never let the arts go by the wayside. The arts are so impactful for people, and in so many different ways that we can't even, ways that we don't even necessarily know. So with that, I'll tell you a little bit about Film Pittsburgh. It is an entity that, as a nonprofit, has only been in existence since 2015. But when I first came on board, this is my 22nd season, it was a part-time job. I was also teaching. I've only ever worked in the arts in my life. And I came on board 22 seasons ago. It was one film festival, the Jewish Film Festival at that time. It was a part-time job. I was a single mother. I needed a job. I didn't know anything about film festivals. But what I learned over time was how impactful film is, right? So at that time, we had one film festival. The very next thing we added was a program during the film festival for middle schools and high schools. I had come out of running a program for the University of Pittsburgh called Shakespeare in the Schools, and I saw how impactful it was to go take 50-minute versions of Shakespeare out into rural Pennsylvania and perform this incredible work for students that didn't have access to cultural activities as much as we do here in the city. So I thought, like, some of these films that we're showing at the Jewish Film Festival are really, there's that educational thing happening underneath. So we could show these to students. Let's see if we can make that happen. So I had no money for the program. It was so early in my nonprofit career that I didn't know that you could ask a foundation for money for a program if you hadn't done the program before. Like, I didn't know that. So I thought, okay, well, I'll try to do this program, this teen screen program first. And I remember the Board of Education allowed me to this is back a few years ago, right? Stuff the mailboxes of the teachers in the city. I had a flyer, and I went down to the Board of Ed, and I was allowed to stuff their mailboxes with my flyer. Sure enough, 1,600 kids came that first year because we had an amazing documentary called Paperclips about 8th graders that had collected 6 million paperclips in rural, I want to say, Mississippi. And they had a movie made about them. So it was astounding, and people had heard about it. Teachers brought their kids, and it was wonderful. So fast forward, Teen Screens, we started that in 2005. Over the years, we added a disabilities film festival called Real Abilities. We now do the big mothership Three Rivers Film Festival here in Pittsburgh. That film festival is 41 years old. Again, international films, independent films. Does everybody, you all have an idea of what the difference is between a film coming out of Hollywood and an independent film? There's probably not like a really good definition of what the difference is, but in my mind, independent means that the filmmaker is driving the process, right? There's no studio, and Trish, maybe you can weigh in on this. There's no studio, it's independent. And so those independent films, I always like to say, filmmakers have their finger on the pulse of what's happening in the world. I'm not making the films. Our team is curating a wide range of films, so people like yourself can go and learn and be entertained and laugh and cry and think and be moved, right? And maybe take you from this point to that point, or maybe engage you in a conversation with a filmmaker afterwards in a Q&A about a difficult topic like mental health. If we don't talk about mental health, if we don't talk about difficult subjects, we're never going to become a better nation, world, global society. So that's part of what we do at Film Pittsburgh through our various film festivals. I wanted to read something here to you. Psychologist Bernard Golden says that the key to overcoming hate is education at home, in schools, and in the community. Well, we look at all of our programming through this lens, and it is particularly effective with students, which I will get to in a second. What I'd like to do now is so in addition to Three Rivers, we have a shorts festival. So Pittsburgh Shorts shows all films 40 minutes and less. That's the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Science definition of a short film, 40 minutes and less, so that those are the films that receive Oscar nominations and Oscar awards in 3 categories: animation, documentary, and live action, which is like a narrative or a fiction film. So I'm going to show you just a brief clip of a film that we showed in 2018 at Pittsburgh Shorts. It won our Audience Award for Best Documentary. And it is a 15 or 12-minute film. It's called Beneath the Ink, and it's about tattoo artist Billy White from Zanesville, Ohio, just down the road, and it was directed by Cy Dodson.
I don't care that it's for free, or I don't care why they got it.
I just feel like I have to do something.
Right now I live in Thornville, Ohio. Originally from Newark, Ohio. Spent 15 years down in Malta, Ohio. I was born and raised here in Circleville, Ohio. My dad was an alcoholic. Mom was an alcoholic. Growing up, that's all Mom and Dad did, was drink. Dad was very racist. The rest of my family, my uncles and stuff, was very racist and negative toward everybody. And then when I was 16 years old, Dad went over the edge, committed suicide. At that point in time in my life, I absolutely hated everyone. I didn't care who it was, white, black, I hated everybody. I ended up going down a path that most people never go down. And it really took a big change to pull me out of that. What's going on, man?
Let me see your back. I want to get a tracing of it real quick.
see what we're working with.
You know, still this day, I'll sit back and think, you know, what the hell was I thinking? It was like that all the way up until I was about 27 years old. A couple years later, me and the ex-wife was talking about adopting, ended up adopting a little boy out of Florida. You know, because that's my son. I don't want my son to know that his dad participated in that. My son now is 12 years old, and he's one of the greatest kids you ever meet. I mean, he's loving. The boy loves me to death, love him to death. Life of hate is just not what you want. You know, you don't want to live life like that.
Thank you. So I'm sorry, I'm just moved by seeing it again. The idea is that this film and a number of films are now available to our middle and high school audiences through our Teen Screen program. It is a field trip program. Pre-COVID, it was the Teen Screen program took place in commercial movie theaters throughout the region. And we would travel. We, would go as far as, I think there's a theater in Latrobe we would go out to. We've gone to Cranberry, but mostly the venues would be here in the city. Then COVID happened, and I never thought that I would be, showing films virtually, because part of the idea behind Teen Screen, without my knowing what I was doing, I was eradicating hate. I was taking away that fear of the other. I had this vision to bring students together in a commercial movie theater. When you're all sitting in the movie theater and you're all gonna watch the same content and the lights go down and the big screen and then you watch it and then it's over and then you talk about it. So even if you're not engaged in a one-on-one conversation with somebody who's different from you, you're seeing people that are different from you and interacting and around the same content. And so that was the vision for Teen Screen, and then COVID happened. Well, we very quickly pivoted and went virtual, started small, and now, we had our largest Teen Screen year this past school year with close to 14,000 attendees. So since 2005, we're gonna this year hit 100,000 students locally that have been participated in this program. We just got a grant money to expand beyond Pennsylvania into West Virginia with the Teen Screen virtual program. And we are using films to educate around a number of subjects. So we work with teachers. Oftentimes teachers will now come to us and say, do you have a film about XYZ? Or we've put together a group of films about different subjects, because virtually they can use us in whatever way they want to. I just also want to say that the Teen Screen program is free for school groups to attend. We raise the money from foundations to present this program, and we don't require anything from the schools, except we ask the teachers for an evaluation, and we ask the students to write reflections. And before I pass my mic over, I just wanted to read 2 quotes to you from student reflections over the years. Straight to the point. The film was amazing. It made me think how I want to continue to write. It made me think how I can help change someone's life. It made me want to be a better person. Last but not least, it made me realize that I want to reach out to those with troubles who feel like they have no one to turn to. And that was from a 12th grade student at Pittsburgh Perry High School. the second quote is from a teacher, and the teacher says, "We continually struggle with bullying, intimidation, and discrimination in schools. This was one way to emphasize the importance of tolerance and to show the students how hate can change an entire nation." And that was a teacher from Elizabeth Forward Middle School. Lastly, I want to end on, in 2017, our teen screen numbers doubled. Wow. Teachers needed help dealing with the divisiveness emerging everywhere in our country, including at schools. So thank you very much.
Catherine, I wondered if you could talk a bit about, you mentioned when you first started that you were doing a Jewish film festival, and can you tell us a little bit about that experience and how it's evolved and why?
Yes. So when I started 22 years ago, it was the 8th year, 9th year of this thing called the Pittsburgh Jewish Israeli Film Festival. And we were called that for a number of years. But as it evolved, it became really clear to me that we didn't really want to have Jewish in the name, because of the potential for anti-Semitism, but also because the films were so great and they weren't really, we wanted anybody to come to see these films. So the name of the festival now is J-Film. And then the only other thing about the teen screen program, it used to be part of J-Film, and we only showed Holocaust-related films, but it expanded so much that, that we had to take it, it was too much to do both things at the same time. So we moved it outside of the J-Film Festival, and now the teen screen program is concurrent with the school year. So September through May, you can participate in a teen screen program, which just speaks to how much teachers, the other thing is that it's like makes total sense, right? Students nowadays are so into screens, and so they're visual learners, right? So watching something on a screen is gonna impact them in such a way that, we've gotten many of these reflections also saying, I understood this so much better than when I read about it in a book, because they could see it. It was visual for them.
So when we were preparing for today, Tim and you and I had a conversation about your adult program. And different from the student program, where you have a teacher who has an interest in educating their children and exposing them to these ideas, an adult program is very different. And your audience could be, you're preaching to the choir. And how do you get people there who really would benefit from films that address these difficult issues, when, if it's self-selected, it's like, I'm not interested in that. So
we get a lot of that.
Yeah, and I don't know if you've done anything to address that.
Well, you really can't. You can't force somebody to go to see, it's an entertainment. It's not, nobody's getting credit for going, like teachers get credit for ongoing education. Students have to go because it's part of the curriculum. So it's interesting to me, doing this all these years, some cities have their own documentary film festivals. We couldn't do a documentary film festival here because folks don't turn out for docs as much as they do for fiction. For narrative films. And that's sad, because some of the docs are much harder to program because they're all so good. It's much harder to get in when you're a doc because it's competitive. You know this. So the point is just that we try to push our audiences by offering films that might encourage them to go. We try to encourage them to go beyond their comfort zone. But at the end of the day, it's something they're paying to come to see. And most people would rather see a sort of mass appeal kind of, fiction film as opposed to a doc about something that might make you feel a little uncomfortable.
So you have to get them when they're young.
Right.
Well, I asked him this question because he is, in his business, is a creative advocate. Is there a way that you can get people to, and how do you get people to see something that they don't want to see?
Well, I think it has to do with creative disruption. So I'll talk a little bit about that. And before I do, thank you for what you do. I mean, getting them young is so critical, and especially as we see budgets reduce, in school districts and arts being cut. We're seeing that in nonprofit space too. That you lose a lot in cutting that. You lose the humanity. It's not arts and humanity. Art is the humanity. And it really needs to be the weapon that we use collectively as a tool against hate and as an opportunity for spreading kind of love. So I'll share my story briefly. This is the date on the screen here that I guess I would consider the fact that I realized I might be an artist or am an artist. I think we're all artists, but this date has very different meanings to different people. Much like art, this has a different meaning to me, and it's all about the lens in which you view it. So on this day, I was helping a friend move. It was a rainy October morning, light mist, and I was helping a friend move from Pittsburgh neighborhood in Greenfield over to Brookline. And my friend had a number of kids at the house during this move, which I don't recommend. All of the people that came over to help also brought kids, and it was just a very chaotic scene. And as someone who I'm single, don't have kids, I'm not around them a lot, so I volunteered to be in the truck and help put all the furniture and boxes in the truck. And that's important because I was outside. And I was able to hear some sirens in the distance. And it was a lot of sirens. I live in the country, and I just felt it was something that, being closer to the city, I was going to hear a little bit more frequently. So I had another engagement. I had to, my father was coming over to my house, so I had to get out of there, I guess somewhat thankfully. But I moved on, and in heading home, I realized that the sirens that I was hearing were a response to the Tree of Life shooting. I came home and turned on the news like many people here in Pittsburgh did, seeing the people that we recognized and the neighborhoods that we recognized. And I opened my computer and started playing around. I'm a graphic designer by trade, have a marketing firm, and really just started playing around with some shapes and in my emotion at the time. And it only took about 10 or 15 minutes and, came up with this. And this was something that, for those of you who may not be familiar, was an image that really went viral following the Tree of Life shooting. It was shared to my private Facebook page. It was something that was a personal reflection on the day. I shared it privately on my Facebook page, and a friend of mine asked me if I could open it up so it could be publicly shared. And from there, it had a viral appeal. I said my dad would come over to help me at my house throughout the day, and I was checking, and it would go up to 100 shares and 500 shares and 1,000 shares, and really a testament to something being a creative disruption. You're used to seeing this symbol perhaps in another way, and it's just one little attribute that makes you really think and go, huh. That's something that's a little bit different. And I think that when we're dealing with art, when we're dealing with getting people's attention, I think we need that sense of creative disruption in some way that helps capture people's attention. Talking a little bit about the symbol itself and some of the artistic details behind it. Naturally, it's the steel symbol meant to represent, kind of the strength of the city, the resilience of the city. The font it's called Boston. It was a font that I was using at the time, but I felt was an appropriate connection to other cities that have had similar tragedies happen to them. The text, the stronger than hate text, was something that I had heard before. I thought it was really in reference to the LGBTQ community, but come to realize that it was actually a phrase that is used by the Shoah Foundation. And then the use of the yellow star, which is one area that has had some reaction, especially within the Jewish community. Like I said, it only took 10, 15 minutes. It wasn't like I was trying to design something that was going to be something that I would be on stage talking about years later. It was just a personal reflection. And I had seen the yellow star being used in the past. I didn't take time to research. I didn't take time to really dig into it. But come to realize through comments that I've received from a number of folks throughout the Jewish community that, the yellow star is used in reflection to the Holocaust, in connection with the Holocaust, which is why it's normally in blue. Whenever I was designing this, I knew that I didn't want it to be blue because I didn't want it to be perceived as a religious symbol lesser than what I knew would be a sports symbol, recognized as a sports symbol. So I put it at the top for that reason and changed out one of the yellow hypocycloid. For those of you not from Pittsburgh, that's what those are called. And those of you not in the graphic design or geometric space. But replacing that hypocycloid with the yellow star, I think, in one way actually makes the symbol a little bit more powerful, because now you're not just wrapping in a Pittsburgh incident. You're wrapping in decades of persecution and anti-Semitism for a particular group. So I feel that part of the viral nature of this image, it's Pittsburgh being Pittsburgh. It's Pittsburgh and the diaspora that's out there that has adopted this, but also wraps in a historical perspective that I think wasn't necessarily intended, but I think had a major impact in it going viral. I said I kind of had this experience on that date from a completely different lens. I have letters and emails and Facebook messages and tweets and such from people from all over the world that have thanked me. Since then, I've had people come up to me and say, thank you, that I can now show that in this instance of hate, I can show an instance of good that countered that and teach my children the right direction to go, and to use this as a teaching element and use it to change future generations, which is important. There were also plenty of trolls that I had to encounter naturally, people trying to take credit for it, sending me their screenshots of the date that they created the file, which can be changed, and I don't know why you have to try to justify that to me. That's not the truth. And then naturally, the Steelers contacted me, and that was a conversation that a friend of mine had worked for a law firm that represented the Steelers, and they said, "Hey, they want to talk to you." It wasn't necessarily a conversation I was expecting, and didn't really even have time to think about that angle of it and the legal angle of using this symbol, but it was all for positive benefit. They had been seeing that what this was doing. They knew that my intent was pure. I wasn't profiting off of it, and they wanted to help. So we entered into a partnership where they assisted and maintained the merchandising rights for the symbol. And then I maintained the design rights for the symbol. So the merchandising rights, they were then able to go after folks that were using that symbol on T-shirts and on other materials for own personal gain, so that it could be brought back into the victims' families and other anti-hate initiatives here within the city and throughout. I mentioned that I haven't to this date really accepted any money as a result of this. This is something that has truly been a gift to the city. The city chose it. The Pittsburgh people chose it. The diaspora chose it. It's still on Facebook profiles, and it's a testament to something having that creative disruption that has enough little meaning that is impactful for someone. I have a tattoo. I have two tattoos. One that I did cover up. It was a dumb lizard that I had in college, so it wasn't anything like the film. But the other one is the font just on my arm right here. That was that was done as a result of someone that was going to join us on the panel here, but had a conflict. And that's Craig Dershowitz from Artists for Israel. They have a program. Part of Artists for Israel's work is they go around to communities that have seen disaster and create graffiti art in areas that you don't typically imagine graffiti art to be, like a bomb shelter. They'll paint a mural of a popular positive figure on a bomb shelter to change the dynamics of a community. But they also have a program called Healing Inc., which goes around to areas that have seen tragedy and try to impact the community through tattoos, trying to put a visual representation of that healing both emotional and physical scars of first responders, victims, and so forth for these incidents. So they do great work. They went to New York after 9/11. I mean, it's a very powerful activity and program that they do. And this has led us to then also me actually to also help to support this conference. So the Eradicate Hate conference symbol that you see is also something that I created and my firm helped to develop. And again, it's a disruption. You have the globe, you have the tree all coming together really to seed new ideas. And it's meant to really make that pause and have you think a little bit about what it is. The font is the same. We wanted to really have a direct connection to the Stronger Than Hate symbol, and something that very few people know, but something that you can take with you as something that you learned here since you did come to this session, is that all the blue little backgrounds that you see in a lot of the work that we do was all part of the stained glass from Tree of Life. So we've digitized that. And it's the background of a lot of the work, a lot of the art and such that you see around our conference signage. So, and like I said, they both have that form of creative disruption. My firm is Trailblaze Creative. So what we do, much like with kids in schools and reducing art and creativity, we work with nonprofits. A lot of nonprofits tend to cast away creative teams, marketing, and communications in a lot of sense. And what my firm does is we help to bring that back to organizations, because we feel that if organizations do not have those creative teams, if you do not have those creative minds at the table, then the organization itself will not innovate. It will not advance, or it will advance slower than it would with those creative teams. So we want to bring those creative minds back to nonprofits. So we help nonprofits and support them in marketing communications efforts, but it's a whole lot more because we're looking to innovate and try to make connections across the organizations. I'll end with that it's really about action, and my contribution to this session in particular, and how we can leave this session with some action and move forward. I'm working with some other folks in Pittsburgh here, New Sun Rising, Riverwise, and an artist, Asa Anna, who the four of us are authoring this creative advocacy playbook. This is a playbook that will provide an opportunity for nonprofits to build creative campaigns that can lead through creative disruption. So this is a work in progress. It's going to be released hopefully next month or later this fall. But it even beyond then will be a work in progress where we will ask those that use it for new ideas. How can we help make it better? What's worked, what hasn't? And we really want this to be something that can be put to use in a variety of different ways, but I can't think of a better use of it than here with the Eradicate Hate Conference. So there's a QR code on the screen. If you're interested in receiving an alert when the playbook comes out, snap a photo of that and fill out your information, and I'll make sure that you get that email. And I'll talk a little bit about what creative advocacy is, or how we define it, and I'll end on that. Creative advocacy is a public and an intentional form of engagement that employs artistic practice to disrupt prevailing narratives and strengthen community movement towards an identified goal. So I think it's very fitting for Eradicate Hate. I'm very honored to be on stage and here discussing this with all of you as well as you all. And I'll
Thank
turn
you,
it back
Tim.
over to you. Thank you.
Thank you. I so enjoyed meeting all of our panelists, and for Tim, he met a challenge that we were all asked as panels this year to come up with a deliverable. Last year it was about educating. This year it's about action. And so thankfully, Tim, in his pamphlet, his plan for creative advocacy has fulfilled our obligation and taken the weight off. But also I think he's just an amazing example about how one person can use their talents and really become involved in this issue and make a difference, because through his art, through that little doodling, he's created a community. He's helped people who were dealing with this tragedy. And so, I think it's a wonderful example that all of us have an opportunity to do something. We just have to take that first step. So thank you. And now it's my pleasure to introduce Trish Adlisek. And Trish is, as I mentioned at the beginning, a Oscar-nominated and Emmy Award-winning producer and director. And if you were here last year, you may have seen some of the film that she was working on. And I'm very happy to let you know that the film is going to premiere on HBO on October 26th at 9 p.m. And then starting the next day, it will be available on HBO Max. And it's called A Tree of Life, the Pittsburgh Synagogue Shooting. And again, I'll say that date and time again. I see you jotting it down. You don't want to miss the premiere, October 26th, 9 p.m. Now, Trish is a Pittsburgher, and she enlisted some wonderful people from Pittsburgh. If you live here, you'll recognize all of their names. Michael Keaton and Mark Cuban and Billy Porter were all executive producers of this film. And Adina Menzel has written a wonderful, beautiful song as the background for this film. So we're really pleased that Trish could join us today, and she's going to be our next speaker. And Trish, we got about 20 minutes, so go for it.
Susan, you're so delightful, and thank you, Tim. Thank you very much, Catherine, for your incredible, insightful, thoughtful, deeply caring explanations of how art can really impact. And I didn't realize, Tim, that you created this incredible Eradicate Hate logo. I have to talk to you about our film. I think you need to come join us because we need to enlist you. This is so impressive. I didn't realize, and so thank you. And the humility is profound. I think people from this area are just so, have such great humility, having been born and raised here, with progressive parents that had a lot of love for everyone, for all humanity. I went to New York to work in film and television, and I had worked in narrative filmmaking for many years, and an environmental issue came to my backyard in the Catskill Mountains of New York. And I was concerned about it, and I wasn't sure how to respond to it. So I got involved, and I started to educate myself. And I thought, what is it that I know? How can I respond? What do I know what to do? So I teamed up with a filmmaker, and we made a few documentaries about this issue. And I don't think I fully realized the magnitude of the art form until I personally became involved with documentary making. And the commitment, the moral commitment that one must make in doing a documentary it's just not a quick film that you make in a year. I mean, this film I'm currently finishing has taken 4 years, but now the real work begins. And now we have to really make certain that what our work has a true impact and reaches people, and that we can have a cultural shift and shape the dialogue. And so the first 2 films I did had a massive impact, not only in the United States, but across the world, and led to a ban on fracking in the state of New York. Of course, we know we need energy, but at the same time, we need to protect the citizens who are not given access to information when they're signing leases and things of that nature. But when I saw the power of the medium, I decided to figure out a way to devote my full time to making documentaries. I had worked on the TV show Law and Order SVU for 14 years. And I always wanted to be a part of important storytelling. And when we first started making the show, I had conflicts. I thought, is it gratuitous violence, or are we really helping victims? Are we giving a voice to them in a way? And then as we got more and more into it, the actress on the show, Mariska Hargitay, received thousands upon thousands of letters from victims of sexual violence saying, if only my detective was like you. You gave me an opportunity. I didn't know what a rape kit was. I didn't. And then I started seeing, wow, how powerful storytelling really is. And so I decided to leave the show and make a documentary about the alarming number of untested rape kits in America. It's called I Am Evidence. And Mariska's foundation has made it their mission to end the rape kit backlog in the United States. It really comes from lack of funding, but also not believing and blaming victims. And we are very successful to date in creating 6 pillars of reform in many states in this country. So the power of the medium really does reach people when someone can't understand what it's like to be a victim of this type of violence, or why the nature of testing rape kits is important. So I had finished that film, which is also on HBO, in April of 2018. And I had lost my mother a few years prior, and my father wanted me to come back to Pittsburgh and either move him to New York, where I have an apartment with my husband and a home in the Catskills, or figure out what else could be done here to, continue living here. And so he came to the Catskills for the summer, and his birthday was October 25th. And we came back to Pittsburgh, and 2 days later we were here and the attack happened. And I think, it was such profound agony in thinking that we would be naive not to think these types of things happen, but having grown up here with such love for community and for each other, of course there were issues, but it was such a heartbreaking crisis that it was overwhelming. And I think the grief it shook me to my core. And I think I really thought about how I wanted to respond to it, and so, my father has Ashkenazi roots, and my husband's family legacy helped, receive hundreds of people during the Nazi rise to power in New York. And we started filming the next day. I called a friend of mine whose parents survived Auschwitz, and he sent a grant, and we started filming the next day. And part of what I really had to ask myself was, could I really tell the story, and how best to tell it? Because it's so painfully dark, but we also have a bit of a perversion in our entertainment and our culture around true crime stories. And I was quite concerned about that, not wanting to. I went to one company early on that said, make it about the perpetrator. And I said, I could never do such a thing. I would never want to give a platform to someone like that. Why would I do that? That's not what this is about. This is about what happened in our backyard and about our Jewish brothers and sisters, and how can we create empathy and give them agency in telling the story. Who should tell the story? And I believe that those that lived it should always tell it, if that's possible. And so I had relationships, although I hadn't lived here full time for many years, I had relationships, and began interviewing the survivors. And one of the things with my previous film, I Am Evidence, was I wanted trauma-informed training to work with victims, because far too often victims complain about inappropriate questions being asked, or inappropriate timing. Like one of the survivors of the attack here in Pittsburgh told me how reporters would regularly show up at his door with a box of donuts and say, talk to me. And how could anyone be so heartless and cruel to, infringe on someone's personal residence like that? And the same was true for victims of sexual violence. It would tell me, they would ask them about their assaults and then say, was he violent? When we know rape is violent, and just the grave insensitivities that went on. And so I had a year of trauma-informed training. I had worked with the Mariska's Foundation's team in ensuring that the best possible care was given in the approach. And part of that trauma-informed care is to never be in a rush, to give people agency and to enlist them in the making of the film so that they see iterations of it. And you'll know full well that that's not an easy thing to do, because they may not like what you're doing. They may say, do it this way, or we don't want that. But at the same time, there has to be an exchange. We can't just take as artists, right? That we have to really allow for some type of dialogue that's productive and healthy, because what we found is, in the making of the film, is that some of the participants had cathartic exchanges. They learned about each other. They didn't realize that telling their loved one's story would make them feel some relief, and that they determined how that story was told. I had one early morning call. One of the family members of the deceased told me, if anybody, I don't like documentaries, but if anybody's going to tell my mother's story, it's going to be me. And I'll meet you when I get to Pittsburgh. And it's been an incredible relationship ever since. And his role in the film is absolutely beautiful. At the 1-year mark of the attack, he created a mitzvah table outside of the Tree of Life Synagogue and was spending time with youth talking about doing good deeds. And for someone who had been through such heinous violence, to lose his mother this way, to be able to stand there and invite people to talk about love and to talk about doing good deeds was profound. It was profound to witness as a filmmaker, but for everyone coming into contact with him also was really so deeply moving. So we took a lot of great care in doing that, and a former Tree of Life congregant, Eric Schumann, played a pivotal role in the filmmaking as editor and second unit director and writer. And we have, of course, as Susan mentioned, Michael Keaton, of course, wanted to immediately support, being from Pittsburgh, standing against hate in all forms. Mark Cuban gave a grant to help cover the editing process, and recently Billy Porter signed up to help us with all of the intersectional approach. That this type of violence starts with anti-Semitism, but everybody's impacted by it. It affects everyone. I don't know how many of you in this room have been affected by hate. I'd like to ask you, how many of you have been affected by hate, whether it's you directly or a family member or someone you love? It is everywhere, whether you're a woman or you're Jew or you're Black or you're Hispanic, whatever it is, it affects all of us. And this idea of creating an intersectional approach and having unity around doing something about it. I mean, Tim, I understand someone said something anti-Semitic during this move or the day before, and you felt the need to respond. And so how we choose to respond and how we choose to spend our time matters greatly. And we don't always have the luxury of this. The not-for-profit world isn't always so easy economically, but if we have that opportunity, it's quite an honor to do it. And so I feel very strongly that the voices tell the story, and they do. And we also honor many of the families by them telling stories of their loved ones. And we have 3 different companies working on impact in education, one of which HBO has brought in, and we've enlisted 2 other companies. One is called Red Owl, and another is Picture Motion, and another one is Good Docs out of California. So it will air on HBO on the 26th, and we will be having screenings nationwide for our impact campaign and internationally as well. And many of the participants, family members, and survivors will be playing a role in that campaign, giving voice to what happened. And so it's been, being someone who's from here and sharing in this, it's been such a remarkable experience to really see the journey of this come together. And we invite everyone to come into the conversation, and we welcome feedback and really want to use it as a critical tool, because people don't, if someone hasn't met a Jew or someone has another, they don't always have that insight of, people ask, do you have horns? Still asking these ridiculously crazy things about what we are as a people or who we are. And we have to dispel these preconceived notions people have about othering. It's so ridiculous at this point. I mean, we're approaching 2023, and we're still doing this. And now the need is even greater than it's ever been, and we also have to look at leadership and holding leadership accountable for the role that they play with their platforms. I mean, everyone has a platform, whether it be a small one or a large one, but to say how we use our platform is important because it impacts others. You make a comment, it sends a message. You play your leadership role with platforms, and I think that's something that we can't be afraid to speak to. I think when people are afraid to say, that's inappropriate, or let's talk about that, let's really get into this, because you're making statements about people or that aren't true. And how do we have that dialogue politically too? Politics were a big concern for people with the film because there is a divide in the community here.
Trish, I wonder, we're almost out of time, but I had a couple quick questions I'd like to ask you. And I'll give you both questions and you can decide what order you want. I'd love to have you tell them about what you're doing next that you shared with me. But I also wondered about when you do a film that's so deeply personal like this one, like A Tree of Life, what happens afterwards? Do you keep that in your head? Are you able to compartmentalize it and move on to next thing?
Thank you, Susan. She's so wonderful. She's been so supportive and insightful. I always come back to center that I'm a conduit. This didn't happen to me. But being a Pittsburgh daughter, I love my brothers and sisters. And I don't want to see people get hurt like this. And I take it very much into my heart. But I extend my family when I do these projects. And now I have a bigger family. But it stays with you forever. You don't spend 4 years or 5 years telling people's stories and it suddenly dissipates at the end. It's not over. It's never over. I will forever have all of this in my heart and my being and continue to talk about it for the rest of my life. If my life ended tomorrow, I'm at peace that I was able to spend time giving voice to what mattered greatly to me and to people that I love. So I think that I'll have lifelong friends here in Pittsburgh, and I hope to be able to continue to stay here in Pittsburgh, back and forth from New York. But my next
have a happy project.
I have a happy project after doing a few heavy-duty social justice-related. I'm doing a project called Music, MUSE-IC, The Woman Behind the Song. Before I started doing A Tree of Life story, I was working on a short film called Dear Prudence. Who was Dear Prudence? Who was Prudence? The woman behind the John Lennon, Paul McCartney Beatles song. Her name is Prudence Farrow. She's Mia Farrow's sister. And it was about her story, what happened to her and why they wrote the song for her. So I put that on hold, and now it's becoming a documentary series. And we are telling the story of many artists who wrote stories about women. Jolene, for example, Dolly Parton's song. The Django Jane by Janelle Monáe, and Patti Smith has a song. And so we're going to make it like a 6 to 8 part series on the women's lives and the artists who wrote about them and why they wrote them. So there'll be a lot of music and a lot of behind the scenes of these.
We'll all be watching.
Yes. Okay,
well, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you, Catherine. Thank you, Trish. And thank you all for your very kind attention to this. And I hope you find I hope you found this a meaningful conversation, and I hope you find the same for the next 3 days. So thank you.
Thanks.